Good afternoon, and thanks for being here, especially during a holiday-shortened busy week in junior mining land. I'm James Qantas, editor and publisher of the Resource Opportunities Investment Newsletter, and joining me today is Blackrock Gold CEO Andrew Pollard. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks very much. Good to be here, James.
Okay, so there's going to be a Q&A after Andrew's presentation, but you can submit questions now. You should see on your screen a little box at the bottom there, and we'll get to those in due course. But Andrew, why don't we start with just a quick summary of BlackRock's market cap now, how much you have in the treasury, and then where exactly your drill program is at Tonopah West.
My goodness, I feel like Scrooge McDuck these days because we've never had more money in our treasury than we have the past couple of months.
Don't blow it.
I think, yeah, well, that's the goal. It's all about return on investment. I think on our very first drill hole, we added $100 million to our market cap or so. So hopefully we can keep that trend up. In terms of cash right now, man, we've raised 12 million bucks or so since June. We've probably spent about $3 million into the project so far. So we're sitting on about 9. But the best part is, I mean, anyone that's followed our story has seen our share price just rocket. So, you know, literally every single warrant that we have right now is in the money. We've seen a lot of those get exercised. So, I mean, you know, every now and then you'll see some big bulk sales show up in the market. And, you know, it's nice to see a few days later, those aren't actually people shorting our stock or dumping. It's people exercising their warrants and creating value out of thin air. So, yeah, frankly, we've never been better. Our market cap right now, yeah, we're off from our highs. We hit a 160, which was our all-time high about 3 weeks ago. I think we closed today at 110. So we've taken a bit of a pause, as has the rest of the, I guess, junior space. I think the tech puking has taken the markets a bit by the chin, but it's a great time to be here in front of your audience and get in front of it because functionally, we've never been stronger.
Yeah, I see you've added a few shares as well in the market. You filed something earlier today. Yeah.
Yeah, well, why not, right? I mean, Jesus, it's one of those things where, I mean, we've, you know, and I'll get into the details, but I mean, we're still on our maiden round of drilling. I've released 2 sets of assays so far, consisting of 8 holes. We've made 2 different discoveries, meaning we've brought life back to 2 historic mines, and these were absolute monsters back when they were producing this time 100 years ago. On 8 drill holes, 3 of which missed their targets, by the way, like deviated, we've still managed to hit 9 high-grade veins. 4 of those veins are over a kilogram per ton silver equivalent. So, yeah, anytime the market wants to sell off as a whole, broadly, I'll be lining up. The problem is I don't pay myself that much, so I wish I could take some more.
Andrew, where's the drill program right now? Like, how many holes have you completed, and what hole?
Yeah, so this is going to be the maiden drill program that I think never stops, in the sense that, I mean, originally we only set out to do 7,000 meters. The problem is when you keep connecting the way that we are, that keeps expanding. So it's a good problem to have. We've now calling for about 20,000 meters at Tonopah West, which is our flagship project. This year, we're about halfway through that. We've only released about half of those holes, so we've got about 10 more holes completed at the lab. We've got 2 rigs turning 24/7, and I mean, man, if we can keep shooting the way we are, this is going to be the story of the year. Certainly, we're one of the top performers in the TSXV this year for so far, but from my perspective, that's yet to come.
Yeah, been a real standout. So I want to start with a bit of a back story let's go back to a darker time. So in 2014, I was working as a mining writer for the Vancouver Sun, and you know, gold was at 1,200 an ounce. There was no money for exploration, and people didn't give a crap about junior mining companies. So I was always looking for good stories, and you know, so I heard about this young headhunter who's focused on the mining sector and building a successful business. And so that was Andrew Pollard. So I interviewed him and wrote a feature article for the Sun back in 2014. And that's still online. You can find that, look it up later. But quite a different time. But I want to focus on, well, fast forward. And I guess, long story short, BlackRock had a CEO that wasn't really working out. Andrew was a large shareholder. So he took over, built his team, and de-risked the project, brought in Tonopah West, and you'll get into all that. But I want to focus on a couple quotes in that article because they're kind of germane. But one is from George Salamis. He's a mining executive that maybe you've heard of. He's had a successful career in mining. He said, "I think Andrew is one of those rare few who are going to inherit the keys to the kingdom of the mining industry." Now, I highlight that quote not to pump Andrew's tires too much, but I think it's accurate for anybody who's starting out, like any young person who's starting out in mining now. There's a silver tsunami, and it's a pretty old industry still. So I think that quote kind of hit the nail on the head. The other quote I want to focus on is from Andrew, and the context is hiring the right people, getting good people, in relating to his headhunting. So he said, at 1,900 an ounce gold, every CEO out there, every COO looks like Jack Welch. So I just want to, ask you, Andrew. Gold's above 1,900 an ounce. You're a CEO. You're running a successful company. You've had some great success and a re-rate in the market. So how do you avoid the pitfalls that happen in every junior mining bull market? Rise in G&A costs, lack of focus, and the dreaded lifestyle, becoming a dreaded lifestyle company. What's your strategy?
Yeah, no, you know what, James, I really appreciated that coverage back then. You guys were doing it was a series, and it was a series of articles you were doing. I think it was called, it was a series of 10 articles, and somehow I got fit in between like Frank Justra and Robert Friedland or someone. I know I came after Frank, which I've always made fun of him because I've come to work with him on quite a few deals since, and I said, oh yeah, well, you're just as famous as me. But anyways, yeah, I cut my teeth building management teams, and I've been doing this. I started my company, the Mining Recruitment Group, back in 2006. Obviously, it was a hot market back then, and talent was so hard to come by. By 2014, when you wrote that article, man, things had changed, but my practice had never been better, and that's because I built up a who's who network of people in the industry, among finance, among geologists, amongst engineers, and amongst high-powered executives. And I was able to, even in one of, probably the darkest days the industry had seen, certainly, in the recent past, I was able to keep growing my practice year over year. And it's those connections which really gave me the willingness to step in and right a ship, because, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be with Blackrock had it not been for those connections in those dark days. George Salamis, who you said, many of you guys will know him from Integra. I've known him for but beyond before that. I placed him on a few boards. I mean, man, he's one of the most sought after people in the industry. And I just had a network of people like that. And funnily enough, I came into Blackrock as an investor, just like you did, James. I think we partook in the same private placement back in March 2018, and we both had the same, I guess, view. It had an incredible project and a management team that none of us really knew. We had some question marks, but man, the project looked good. So we both wrote checks. I wrote a very good one. And I was working with lots of companies back at the time, and they'd never seen me like this. The headhunter became so myopic.
Importantly, the flagship project back then was Silver Cloud, right? Your other project.
Yeah, and we still have it. Silver Cloud's Silver Cloud's the reason why I was able to build the team that I did, and it was the team that I built that was able to generate this other world-class opportunity. It was one of those tales where someone whose business had been predicated for 15 years on one thing, and that's that management matters. Well, the biggest check I've ever written into a private placement ever up to that point, the headhunter didn't look at the people he was investing in. He only looked at the project. And listen, good projects get broken by bad teams all the time. And Blackrock, honestly, everything that could go wrong went wrong after we wrote this. I mean, you wrote it up right after. I got people like George and the Integra team and lots of my client book into Blackrock back in March 2018 because I was so excited about the Silver Cloud project. I thought of the valuation it was at. It had to be the most undervalued exploration project in the business, and I was willing to put my money where my mouth was. And then other, people in my network just followed me into the deal. Fast forward a year and a half later, the company had raised 1.6 million. They'd spent about 2.2. The valuation, I mean, it was in the gutter if it traded at all. I think it was 3 cents the day I stepped in, and $1.2 million market cap. but I also knew that I had a unique set of skills, as Liam Neeson said, and one of those skills was making sure that how to get the right people behind the right project. So I came into Blackrock purely because of the Silver Cloud project originally, and I saw the company had the wrong team at the time, and I thought that was something that I could fix. So I only came in on an interim basis to start. I only signed a 1 month contract. I was going to rebuild the board and move on. But sometimes when you capture lightning in a bottle, the way that Bill and I did, and I brought Bill Howell on as executive chairman, man, you don't kick a gift horse in the mouth. And honestly, I've never looked back. So it's one of those things. In terms of answering your question, though, I am the accidental CEO, but turns out I had a bit of a knack for it because I stepped in at 3 cents. First thing I did was I canceled the private placement the old management team had at 5 cents. They were going to issue 32 million shares and 16 million half warrants. It would have killed the company. I stopped that. I self-financed the company for a month. Yeah. And then when we raised money, I raised about a third of what they were seeking for, and I did it at twice the price. So to avoid the pitfalls, I had I worked behind the scenes and in the boardrooms for some top-flying mining companies since I was 19, 20 years old. I've looked the same age since I was 14. Honestly, I was buying liquor for my friends in high school, and I was convincing clients, when I was 19 and 20 on the phone to hire me to put together their management teams. And back then, I wasn't working on retainers. I was only working on the caliber of my network, and there was no gun to their head. Fortunately enough, I was pretty good at what I did, and I was able to build a good network. And fast forward, here we are today, and I've been able to leverage that. It is nice to know that I wasn't selling smoke and mirrors between 2006 and 2019 when I stepped in here. I always said that there's one thing that's going to make or break a company, and that's going to be management. And honestly, the only thing that changed with Blackrock when I joined in May of 2019 and say where we are today is that we switched out the team. From May, I stepped in at 3 cents. The next week we were 10 cents. 3 months later we were 37 cents on the back of about 80 million shares traded. And the only thing we hadn't even got Tonopah at that time. The only thing we did was build the right team worthy of the project and then start shining a spotlight on it. So
yeah. Okay. Well, let's maybe you could touch on. Yeah. Sorry to cut you off.
No. In terms of pitfalls, honestly, sometimes you need you need inspiration and desperation. In this case, it was desperation. We had no other choice. We bootstrapped it for quite a while to get it out of the gates, but we did what was right. I had a lot of skin in the game. The problem with it before was it was a lifestyle company. When I came in, I was an investor-focused company, and ever since then, we just tried to, I don't want the biggest market cap. I want the highest share price. So that's two very different outlooks. And that's probably the biggest thing I've learned is don't invest in companies where the chef doesn't eat his own cooking, as they say.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's one of the things I liked about the story from the start you took over. You and both you and Bill Howell have been pretty prolific buyers in the public market. So let's talk about, we'll touch a bit more on Silver Cloud later, but why don't you go into your presentation and then we'll get to the Q&A after.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. So, as we mentioned, we've seen a bit of a sell-off in the past couple of weeks. At the beginning of August, there was a broad sell-off in the commodities markets. Into the stock market in general on the back of some weakness from tech stocks and just generally summer malaise. But honestly, we've gone on an epic run of all runs as of late, and it's incredibly. Let me just see here. Okay. There we go. So as you'll see here, this has been one of the epic runs. This was a snapshot of our stock price up until, I guess, last Tuesday, which is the day we announced news. I took the snapshot midday. The news we announced was unequivocally good. We released our second set of assays on our maiden drill program, and these were world-class numbers we put out. We've effectively de-risked our project in the sense that we're not just a one-hole, one-target wonder. We released assays from, really 3 different target areas, but we announced a new discovery in a second target area, which was truly good. And we opened unequivocally in the green that day. I think we announced it at 126. We opened at 140, but I judged what summers look like in COVID. I thought most people would actually be in front of their computers and not on vacation. And the joke was on me because we did very little volume that day. And I think in the last hour, someone sold us down a little bit. Regardless, I mean, this is what a discovery-driven stock chart looks like. We added about $100 million in valuation to our market cap based off of one drill hole back in July. That one drill hole also generated Eric Sprott as a lead investor the very next day, who wrote a $5 million check personally and brought in Sprott Asset Management and their precious metal fund as another key investor in a $7.5 million raise, which we weren't after, but sometimes when once again, you don't kick a gift horse in the mouth. The market seemed to like it as we traded up significantly on that news too. So we, in March 15th, I think it was, we hit a low of 7 cents. We actually announced the acquisition of our new project back in February, but no one noticed. So we announced this world-class acquisition, a consolidation of one of the largest silver districts in all of North America. We control more than half of it, and 2 weeks later, we were half of our valuation. In fact, I got a lot of hell for it. They thought we were. They thought we were pivoting when in fact this tied in perfectly to what we were already doing. So if I could sum up BlackRock in two things, we're a Nevada-focused company, but we're after big ounces and big grade. We've got two district-scale opportunities. Both are in the precious metal space. Number one, which is pretty much 100% the value driver for us at this point, is called Tonopah West. It's consolidated half of one of the largest silver districts in all of North America. Tonopah Silver District, this time 100 years ago, would have been the precious metal district in the U.S. in terms of gold equivalent ounces produced. I mean, this is second to only the Comstock lode. This was the last district scale discovery made in, I guess, Nevada, but prior to World War I. And back then, I mean, you had everyone and their son flocking to this area. Some big people. Charles Schwab was on the board of one of the company's properties, who we've now since consolidated. Wyatt Earp came through there back in the day and set up a saloon. I mean, this was really, really cool stuff. Tonopah itself is known for two things. Very big veins and very high grades, and those are nice things to have, I guess. So on a 50-year historic production profile, Tonopah produced at over 2 kilograms per ton silver equivalent, 2 kilos. Anytime you're giving precious metals assays at in the kilogram per ton as opposed to gram per ton, you're onto something. And something very unique about Tonopah is the fact that it's a pure play precious metals district. It's 100-to-1 silver gold ratio, which is very, very unique. Normally you have to go down to places like Peru or Alaska or Yukon, far-flung places or not so safe jurisdictions. This is halfway from Vegas to Reno. There's a highway that goes through it. It's almost too good to be true. We've also got another project, which is the reason why I was able to build the board that I did right out of the gates. It's the reason why even, before I joined in May of 2019, and the company was, it was on death's door. And I guess it's fitting I say that because Silver Cloud has attracted some really big level interest previously. This is a big opportunity that BlackRock had back when James and I originally invested in it. In fact, one of the things I did, because I wrote such a big check, was I worked, I guess, free of charge. And once they got their hands on it, I helped them to get a really top tier executive to take over the helm. And he joined in October of 2018, I guess it was. His name was Brian Morris, and Brian was he was the preeminent authority on the Northern Nevada Rift. Brian was Senior VP of Geology for Klondex Mines. Klondex had just been taken out for $698 million the year before by Hecla. And guess what? Klondex's properties, which were the Hollister mine and the Midas mine, which effectively engulf us at Silver Cloud, I mean, he was the guy there. So to get someone like him at the helm, he joined the company as president in October of 2018. And unfortunately, a week later, he was killed by a drunk driver. He died a hero in the sense that he came up to an accident on the highway. Someone had been driving the wrong way down there. He got out of his car. He got out to help. He was removing bodies from the wreckage, and unfortunately, another car came around and hit that wreckage, and he was killed instantaneously. That took obviously a lot of wind out of me personally, a lot of shareholders, obviously his family. He died he was an ultimate hero in that situation, but that was really the death blow to the company. And it was just traded aimlessly down ever since. In May of 2019, the company was insolvent. It really had no other options. The board was out of ideas. I said, okay, well, let's see if I can roll up my sleeves and bring in a team. So that's how I actually got in here. It was because of Silver Cloud. And Silver Cloud's had some really good lineage in the past. I was able to get Bill Howell, who actually had a discovery on here, and who thought that this was the story. This was the one right he wanted to wrong in his career. Placer Dome, who Bill Howell was with previously, they made a discovery. They made him drop the project when gold prices were tanking. Major miners didn't have budgets to do grassroots exploration like they don't have now. But Bill thought that there's a multi-million ounce discovery to be made. I got him back in the driver's seat 17 years later. That's what got him to the company, and it was he who generated the Tonopah West opportunity. So it's amazing how these things happen. I wish I honestly didn't have to step in here, and I wish Brian was still here, but life happens when you're planning other things. So what's not to get sentimental on you guys though, because I think you'd be proud here. So Tonopah Silver District, this is our value driver. This is the reason why we've gone on the run that we have. This is the reason why Eric Sprott invested. We've got some very big, we've turned the corner from retail to institutional in about 1 quarter, which is unheard of in this business. And the reason being is that we've breathed fresh life into one of the largest silver districts in North America. When it was sold to me originally by Bill back in January, I thought, I told him I wanted whatever he was smoking. It sounded way too good to be true. He said that in the heart of the Walker Lane district, one of the most prolific gold belts on the planet, where all the mining engineers and geologists stay, and all of the surrounding projects like Kinross's Round Mountain. I mean, there's a development stage project that literally they got their federal permits, I think, the other day, part of Westfall Mining. I mean, all these people stay in Tonopah. There's a mining museum right next to our property with talking about the significance of this district, and no one thought to put a drill hole into the historic workings. So I thought it was too good to be true. Then I learned more, and then I saw the model Bill put up, and then honestly, everything that's happened since has been as predictable to us as could be, but it's been the biggest surprise to the market. I told the market that our first drill hole should be about 24 meters thick, because we have historic records showing that in the 1920s they stopped mining one of the mines at a certain level because they hit water, and where they stopped mining, it was a 24-meter thick vein. Well, Bill wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised when we hit it. Well, guess what? Our very first drill hole into the project, we announced 29 meters, grading nearly a kilogram per ton silver equivalent. That breathed life to the entire property, and everything else we've said so far has come true. Here is this is the guy who discovered it. Now, we're talking about frontier mining sort of stuff. Tonopah is in the middle of nowhere in historic terms. It's literally halfway between Vegas and Reno. There's a highway that goes through it now, but back then it was just sand. This guy, Jim Butler, and his mule discovered it. The story goes that his mule ran off in the middle of the night. Jim was chasing it. He tripped over this outcropping vein, and Tonopah was born. This grew to become, within about 1 year, one of the most significant precious metals districts in the U.S. That's not me saying it. This is a newspaper clipping from probably the 1920s talking about it. It was so crazy. And here's the story of Tonopah on a chart. The red line there shows the production, the level of production. You'll see that they started producing pretty much right away. So it was discovered in 1900. I think commercial production started 1901. And then, it's one of those things where I wish I paid more attention in grade 12 history. This thing took on a life of its own up until about World War I. Tonopah itself was discovered it's an east-west trending district, so the discovery was made on the east side from outcropping veins. There was no drilling done back in these days. All they did was mine the stuff straight from surface, and these veins went to the west. They went down and to the west. So everyone piled in and followed everything. So that you'll see the high in production there during the early 1900s to say 1915. All of the production was centered on the east side of town, and then as those mines got mined out, everything moved to the west. What happened in 1917, World War I? Obviously, lots of people were pulled from the mines and sent over to fight. And then around in 1923, the price of silver became unpegged. It was trading at $1 leading into that. Within 1 year, it went down to 65 cents. Within about 3 to 4 years, it went down to 35 cents. You'll see it just dropped off like a cliff. Now, all of these things, this was the last time that this district had ever been looked at. And it's amazing that it's been sitting in, the heart of the most looked at, one of the most prolific gold belts in the world, with geologists and engineers living right there. And there's school kids going through this mining museum every day, and no one tested these workings until we did. And as I said, our very first hole drilled about 30 meters of a kilogram per ton. We also hit 2 other veins that the historic miners didn't know about because they never drilled anything. We're hitting veins that these guys mined in areas these guys mined for decades, and they never knew were there. One of the veins was the single highest intercept we've hit yet on the project, and that was at over 3 kilograms per ton silver equivalent. It had 18 grams of gold in it, and this is just stuff we're hitting by accident. There's reasons why this district fell off a cliff. There's a whole backstory why it hasn't been looked at since. But I want everyone to know that this is more of a real estate consolidation play than it really is an exploration prowess endeavor. I mean, what we're doing, we're drilling into known historic mines here. This isn't grassroots exploration. This is mine expansion style drilling. We've released 8 drill holes so far. We've 3 of them, as I said, missed. In 2 of those holes, we actually hit new veins we didn't even know were there. So in 8 drill holes, 9 different high-grade veins at what most people would consider mineable grades. And 4 of those veins are over a kilogram per ton. I mean, these are numbers that are unheard of. When I showed our second set of drill results to my board, they were doing somersaults around the office. It was incredible. Our very first drill hole is what woke up the market. Our second set of results is what woke up corporates, because we've got Beaver Creek coming up next week. And honestly, on Tuesday of last week, I probably got 10 different meeting requests from major miners and mid-tiers wanting to, get in the Andrew Pollard business, because all of a sudden we went from a 1 drill hole, 1 target company to having, 2 historic mines brought back to life in the span of like a month and a half. So we're sitting pretty. The best part is we've got 2 other targets. We released 1 drill hole from target number 3, which is listed there as the new discovery target. That was a new discovery made by Coeur Mining 2 years ago, who had a portion of her property. They kilograms a ton silver equivalent. The other was about a kilogram. We're following up on those as well. And then we've got a 3rd historic mine, which we're trying to breathe life into, which we haven't even drilled yet. So honestly, we've got a lot going for us. What you'll see on the screen here is the town of Tonopah to the right. So this is a satellite image. We've got 4 different targets overlain. Target number 1 is Victor. That's where our very first drill hole came out of. That was an individual mine. It was really unique in the sense that the veins were so thick, and they mined this. This is one of the biggest producers in the district. It was part of what was called the Tonopah Extension Company back then. Charles Schwab was on the board there, and he was the single largest shareholder. In fact, he personally financed the mill back in those days. His names are on all the deeds or the, I guess, the note. But back then, effectively, they mined this thing down. Well, they mined it pretty deep, down to about 1,800 feet, 1,880 feet. But then they hit water. The story goes that they brought in electric water pumps to come and deal with the water. And it wasn't much. Certainly by today's standards, it would be nothing. But back then, they brought these water pumps in and tied to the electric grid. Pumps worked fine. Unfortunately, the electrical grid wasn't all that reliable. And I guess brownouts and blackouts aren't really what you want when you've got a team of people nearly 2,000 feet below surface. So they just stopped mining it altogether. And the same company owned our second target, which was a completely separate mine. It had multiple veins in one area, and they mined that down to about the 1,650-foot level before the market really fell off a cliff. Well, by the time they got the water pumps, they commissioned some very long lead items. The long lead items for Victor that they were going to go back to were diesel generators and water pumps that would run off the diesel generators. Well, by the time they got these products delivered, silver prices hit 35 cents. They never actually got installed. Now, here's the interesting thing, and I don't think I've said this yet, but hole one, what we did was we had access to all of the historic mining maps across the project. So we knew where all the historic workings were. So what did we do? We know they mined down to about the 1880 level. We targeted our very first drill hole just past that, so about maybe 50 meters down plunge of where they were mining. We told everyone it should be about 1 kilogram per ton, and we told everyone that it should be about 24 meters. Well, that's what we hit. Unbeknownst to us, we actually bottomed in workings. The drill hole deviated a little bit, threw it off course a little bit, and we bottomed in workings that we didn't know were there. There's quite a bit of wood and stuff in there. In looking at that in hindsight, what it looks like we bottomed into there was the housing where they were going to be putting the historic water pumps and the generators. Well, they never ended up installing them. Now, I guess a question for everyone at home would be: do you think a company like this, publicly traded, big time shareholders like Charles Schwab on the board, do you think you would spend 2 years ordering all this equipment, taking out all this debt, and in fact doing development work on something that you thought was entirely mined out? This is probably the most bullish thing, aside from the kilogram per ton over 30-meter intersect we have. It's because, of course, that doesn't make sense. Of course, they thought it was going to keep going, and my goodness, we've just barely scratched the surface on one drill hole, but one drill hole gave us life. I'll take you to our second. We're actually very forthright. Going into this, we've actually put our targets, our upside exploration targets for each of these locations. On this slide, we've got two of them. In one, we've got Victor in Ohio. So that's targets number 1 and number 4 from this previous map. So as a whole, we think the target, this property going into it had about 6 million tons of material at somewhere around 1,500 grams per ton. Victor and Ohio together, we thought represented up to maybe 3 million tons. If you look at Denver, Paymaster, Bermuda, our second discovery, of which we've since sold off quite a bit, this is the most consequential target that we've opened up on the entire project. This, we think, could represent up to about a half of the potential ounces. Now, before we put these targeting figures up here, that was before we knew there was other veins which we've hit. We've since hit a 3 kilogram vein in Victor, and on this one we actually intersected a vein about 1.5 meters thick at 1,600 grams per ton silver. So I mean, these numbers are looking pretty good to us. But target number 2 is the one that got the corporates calling us. Target number 2 is the one that we think we've got the most potential at. I mean, this is the company maker. And I want to give you guys something to look forward to. So it's easy to show here. I mean, you see where hole 1 went, and you see where hole 3 went. Hole 3 deviated significantly but it still managed to graze what we think is a part of the ore chute. We got 1.5 meters of what we think are decent grades, but it missed the actual target. Well, we're targeting about 300 meters down plunge, and we brought in a different drill rig to handle this because it was evident that the RC rig, which is generally used for more shallow drilling, wasn't accurate enough. So we've got 3 core drill holes completed at Victor. They're targeting about 300 meters worth of strike. We put out visuals, I guess what we were seeing from our hole 1, which would be about 100 meters down plunge of where the core hole 1, which is about 100 meters down plunge from our original intersect. And we said we hit a 32-meter zone there. If we're hitting something, and we're testing 300 meters of strike, if we're hitting something 24 to 30 meters thick at the grades we've already encountered over 300 meters strike, my goodness, that's a lot of potential ounces. At Denver right now, we've hit 5 different veins in this area, all over 300 gram per ton cutoff, which is what we sort of see as the level at which you can make money doing underground mining in Nevada. We've got 5 veins we're following up on. Our next set of holes at Denver, which are at the lab right now, we're doing 800 meter step outs. We're not doing that because we're crazy. We're doing that because we've got reason to believe that we can, on the back of our first round of drilling, prove up about 800 meters of strike beyond multiple veins which pancake on top of each other. This is the reason why this we think is going to be the big kahuna of the entire project. Target number 3, this is what core mining drilled previously. We've got a bunch of drill holes completed at that. We released one, hole 8, where we encountered 1.5 meters of about 560 silver equivalent. But we think we can hit it better. We still haven't quite drilled it the way we wanted to in terms of hitting it the right rock package. But honestly, we got 3 hole. We've got 3 big intersects here, and we're figuring this out big time. So that's the story of Tonopah. I mean, we're effectively, so we've got 2 rigs going 24/7. The core drill rig is living exclusively at the Victor target right now because that's the one going in deep, right? We're trying to, we were trying to hit something at a distance using a shotgun, but we've decided to bring in the sniper rifle on this one. So what's going to happen is we're bringing the in the news release, what we say is we're using core tails. And what core tails mean is we're pre-drilling the holes about 2/3 of the way down with the RC rig. We do that because the RC rig is great for doing things quick and inexpensive, and is really accurate when you're drilling at shallower depths. And then once you start getting into that mid-level zone, then you switch it out. You switch the rig out entirely, and you bring the core rig in. So when I say core tails in news release, it's because the end of the drill hole, the one that's guiding it to the promised land, that's the core, and that's really just what's going to be using to get it right where we hope it's going. So yeah, there's lots to look forward to. I see, our first 2 sets of assays proved our concept. It's our second set of assays, the ones which are testing the down plunge extent of Victor up to about 300 meters there at, hopefully 30-meter thickness, and then the 800-meter step outs. Those are the ones that if we connect there, then you ain't seen any growth yet. This is still the first act of the Blackrock story. Now we've got a second project, which is, as I said, the reason why Bill and I got here in the first place. And this is 45 square kilometers at the top of the one of the biggest mining complexes in the world. It's right where the Northern Nevada Rift intersects with the Carlin Trend. Seen 3 rounds of exploration by Teck, Newmont, and Placer Dome in 3 different target areas. They cut gold in all 3 areas, and no one had really ever followed them up with any systematic exploration since. Well, Blackrock's doing this. Bill made a discovery on this with Placer Dome in 2002. He hit 12 meters of about 5.5 grams per ton. We've now turned that into about 250 meters worth of strike on 6 drill holes. But the most exciting part is the target that we're looking at drilling in a few weeks' time. Our bread and butter is Tonopah, and I don't want anyone to think we're taking the foot off the gas pedal there, because we've got 2 drill rigs that are living there and going 24/7. But this is probably the best undrilled target in Nevada right now. It's called Northeast Veins. It's directly adjacent to where Hollister is. Hollister back in 2015, 2016, according to mining.com, was the second highest grade gold mine operating on the planet. It had head grades up to 34 grams per ton, and they mine these veins right up to our property boundary. You know what we found on our side of the property, of the claim map last summer? 8 veins outcropping at surface. We've also got a mercury mine up there, and it's covered in sinter. So as Pathfinder elements go, I mean, this is the mother of all undrilled targets. We're in direct firing line of what was a prolific producer, and we're excited to test that out. This could be the sleeper success of the company, but right now we're excited to just expanding the footprint of mineralization we've already achieved on our first few holes at Tonopah. 800-meter step outs are a company maker. Honestly, there's no company that attempts that right off the bat. We've got reason to believe that we'll connect. Those have been in the lab for about 2 weeks, so I don't think it'll be a long wait. So target number 2 could get a lot bigger very quickly. And frankly, I think we spoiled the market with our very first drill hole, because I think, people that might just invest but not really understand the business as it is, they think that every vein should be 30 meters thick. We don't need a 30-meter thick vein. In fact, it's unheard of. The fact that we hit that on the first thing and we're following up on Victor, that's a blessing. But I'll tell you what, it's our second target that's really going to make or break the company. So with that, I'll pass things over to James, and maybe we can do the Q&A.
Am I on? Sounds good. I think I'm on. Great. Well, you answered some of the questions. Somebody asked about deviation, and so the core, you're dealing with that, like RC first, and then with the core rig.
Yeah, deviation is something here that I'll go into that a little bit, because I've had a few questions on that too. I mean, listen, even if the deeper you go, the more you can deviate, right? I mean, imagine, so even if you're using a core drill rig, if you were to drill about a mile, the amount of flexibility in steel is actually beyond what most people think. So imagine if I was looking across my room right now and I had a target that I wanted to hit, and I was going to try and hit that target with a bunch of straws, like soda pop straws. And then what I do is I just keep adding on those straws. Now, the first straw is going to be very tough and resilient. The second straw probably, equally so. But as you go, it starts to deviate just a little bit, and it curves, right? If you were to drill a mile using core, there have been instances where it actually deviates so much that it comes all the way around, and it does like a full circle. Like, the pliability of steel is beyond. Now, luckily, RC is typically more used for shallower stuff. The fact we hit hole 1 the way we wanted to, people were surprised we did that. It was probably ambitious of us to keep trying, because each of the follow-up holes we're using with RC, we're testing, another 100 meters down, right? So those just kept, and obviously the deeper you go, the more the pliability goes. So we decided to bring the second rig in. We were going to bring it in anyways, but we just ended up using it for some of the more shallow stuff too. And luckily, that's the deepest target of the property. So it looks like we've already solved that. I mean, we solved it before we had our first assays back, because there's a lag time too. It's like 4 weeks to get results back, and we knew we were going to bring it in anyways. But the RC rig's good for our shallower targets, and our shallower targets are literally every other target than Victor. So, we've got one dedicated to the core rig, dedicated to Victor, and the RC rigs right now living at target number 2. We've got the 800-meter step outs completed. And now what that RC rig is doing is it's working its way backwards and doing infill drilling on 100-meter centers. I'll tell you what, if we connect on that 800-meter step out and then work our way back, honestly, the amount of ounces that we could show on this first pass drilling It would be unheard of. No one's ever done this before. Not that I know of, at least.
How,
Where this is the ultimate. Yeah.
Andrew, how are you targeting that 800-meter step out? Like, how can you accurately
So
identify
that's
where
a
the
good
vein is?
question. Yeah, so there was one random drill hole. Actually, there was a couple random drill holes done in the 1970s, not targeting the historic workings, which we've drilled into, but on the very westernmost portion of her property, Chevron drilled a hole, and they hit some really good stuff. I think they encountered about 560 gram per ton silver equivalent over a decent width. Now, the issue that we saw, and looking back on it and knowing what we know now with all of the data that we got, is that it looks like they hit this vein, the same vein, and we think it was the Denver vein that they hit in the wrong lithologies, meaning if you hit a vein but it's not in the right rock package, you might get a huge variance in terms of what the grades are. Well, we're targeting that exact same intercept that Chevron made. We've got every reason to believe that it was going in that same orientation, and it's an extension of the same system they were mining. If that's the case, that's about 800 to 900 meters, depending on the vein we're looking at, that it runs, and there's no reason to think that they wouldn't go there. So what we've done is we've drilled quite a few holes there, targeting Paymaster and Denver, and then we've worked our way back. If that happens and we connect on all of those, let's just say Christmas comes early for everyone that's got a position in the company.
Besides Victor, so Victor's obviously very thick. Is the average vein width like roughly 1.5 meters to 3 meters? And what's the economic sort of threshold for mineralization on those narrower veins?
Yeah, that's a great question too. So, we're not short of technical talent or silver background on our board. I mean, Dan Vickerman, who just joined, he's on the board of Discovery Metals, for example, which is a big silver company. David Lang is a world-renowned mining engineer and mine builder. He's on the board of Fortuna. And obviously Bill, he was head of exploration for Placer Dome. He's got 100 million ounces to his name. So, I asked that question of all of them. I said, what can we, what's workable down there? The answer is about 5 feet. If we hit a vein over 5 feet, say 1.5 meters, that should be pretty good. In terms of grades, anything over 300 should be seen as workable. Anything over 500, cash cow. Anything over a kilogram, which we got 4, my goodness, let's go to Monte Carlo. So we're not short in high grade veins. In terms of thickness, I mean, our smallest intercept's been 1.5 meters. There's gonna, it's all about how you hit it. You could just graze the side of it, or you can hit it dead on. And some of these veins, I mean, there's huge variance even in the area of the vein you're in. So, I mean, one section of the same vein you could hit, it could be 500 grams. Another section, it could be multi-kilos per ounce. It really changes. But as long as they're workable, say above 300, 325 or so, gram per ton silver equivalent, and 1.5 meters, we're sitting pretty and we're living large.
Okay. Next assay results. When can investors expect the next results, and how many holes are you going to report, per news release? As
soon as possible. Honestly, I'll eat the mistake of releasing. It's a really thankless job, I'll put it this way, because I had the choice of putting out drill results when the market expected them last week, but facing the end of summer, or I could have sat on them for another week, which I didn't really want to do because I thought these were world-class results. I mean, as I said, we went from 1 drill hole to 8. We went from 3 veins to 9. I didn't want to sit on that. But of course, had I sat on that, then, for the week leading up to that, people would have said, oh, the results aren't going to be good, and you probably would have seen some selling too. So either way, you rip that Band-Aid off, but if we keep putting out stuff like that regularly, and it looks like, we're hitting it the way we modeled, which is no small feat considering these are the first drill holes ever into this property, into this project and these workings, then, it's going to be undeniable. In terms of results, this is where the rubber hits the road, because now we've gone from 1 drill rig to 2. We can put out stuff regularly from Victor, and then the RC rig, which works at probably twice the speed, can keep focusing on building out other areas. I'm hoping that we'll have more results out in mid to late September, and then more out in early October. And then from there. We'll just keep walking it forward. But honestly, this is world-class stuff we've done, and it's 8 drill holes, 3 missed, and 9 veins, some of which we didn't even know were there. So this is honestly fishing with dynamite.
Okay, let's. We got a lot of questions. Let's start racing through them. Somebody's asking, what share price do you have in mind if exploration goes according to plan, and over what time period do you expect to see that valuation? But I guess maybe I think he's getting at like what's the upside from here. It's been a great story so far.
Well, listen, I mean, we're connecting. I mean, 6 million tons. That is the upside we see, is what we saw coming in, knowing what we knew in terms of just the veins that we knew. We've obviously hit many others, and who's to say that we're not going to hit many others? The best single thing about this district is this is one of the largest in North America, and it's probably one of the smallest. It's only 4 miles long east to west, and we have half of that. And what they extracted in 1900 to say 1930 using, I guess, pickaxe and mule is different than what we can highlight with things like geophysics and drilling, right? So, even when some of our holes deviated, they've literally augured into brand new veins. Our single highest intercept on this drill program was from a vein we didn't even know was there, atop a mine that they were mining for 15 years. I mean, how many other things are going to be left to be there? The one.
Okay, so you're bullish. You're bullish.
I think I put $7,500 in this morning, and that's still a big check for me. I mean, I honestly, as I said, I'm not here for a paycheck, and I'm not here for a lifestyle management company. I'm here to make as much money as I possibly can, and add as much value as I can in a shorter period of time, and do it the right way.
Okay.
So more
drilling.
This is the golden.
More drilling questions. How deep do you eventually want to drill, and then can you drill from underground workings at all on the property?
Yeah, so that's the second phase of what we're going to do. Is our first phase, our first round of drilling was really just to capture the market's attention. I mean, when we started drilling, to fund our first round of exploration, I did a $4.5 million placement at 20 cents. Obviously, we were able to increase our valuation. Our valuation, this first round of drilling is really just to capture the market's attention, show that what we're doing has merit, and obviously we've proven that really, really well, and expand the footprint as much as we can from surface to justify spending the engineering to either rehab the workings, which are still there, or to drive our own declines and go underground. Obviously, it would be really, really good, and certainly we're probably at that point now where we could justify looking at trying to open things up and going underground for some drilling. But anytime engineers are involved, that's a pretty big check too. So right now, just we're still on our maiden drill program.
This time next year, where will Blackrock be? Sold, still exploring? I don't think you'll be producing. And a resource estimate? Are you even thinking about that? The timing of that? Or?
We have so much, we're still at the very base of the Lassonde curve, and the Lassonde curve is the discovery curve. We're, this time 3 months ago, we were priced as a grassroots explorer. Now we're showing that, we've probably, the historic miners left a lot for us. I think in 6 months from now, we'll be able to show that, realistically, we might have more on our property than they even extracted from a historic point of view. So what we're trying to do, this point next year, this, as districts go, this is too good to pass up. If you look at any other primary silver districts like Mexico, they, like First Majestic or Pan American or Fortune, all these companies actually got shut down entirely due to COVID. What didn't stop in Nevada during the peak of the pandemic? Mining. There's a lot of jurisdictional risk for a lot of these companies, and I think companies like First Majestic, whose slogan is "one commodity, one country," might be rethinking that at a certain point. We showed the grades and the widths that we're hitting as easily as we are, and auguring into new veins all the time. I don't think this time next year, I doubt we'll still be a company, but that's just me. Either way, what happens between now and then doesn't change. We're trained on the track. We're going to be adding as much value as we can through discovery, and we've got the team to do it. So we're open to selling 1%. We're open to selling 100%. The question's going to come down to deal and terms.
So you do like a deal with the corporate under the right, like a 9.9% under the right.
As I said, our first drill results captured the market's attention. We added $100 million to our market cap. Our second drill result last week, which opened up 2 different targets. I got 10 different meeting requests from major and mid-tier mining companies for next week. So anything can happen, but right now it's not going to change anything in the interim for us.
Somebody asked, and he said, you might not want to answer this, but somebody asked about Summa Silver. And I think they have like a large part of the district on the other side. So do you want to say anything about them? And
yeah, well, as I said, the story of Tonopah, it was made from the discovery was made on the east side of town, and effectively that's where the production started, and then everyone followed it to the west. So lots of the east side of town was the hub. In fact, that's where the town is. So the difference between our 2 properties is the fact we don't have a town on top of us, which makes ease of exploring that much better. But number 2 is that you had all these publicly traded companies come in. They thought certain areas were mined out, and everyone went westward. So west represents blue sky. We entered that area before they did. In fact, before we entered that area, a company called Ely Gold Royalties are the ones that really quarterback the consolidation of all the claims. I'd say that if we had the opportunity to try and make a deal on that, and it was far cheaper than what we paid for ours, we declined, and Ely had many years to try and make a deal on that, and I don't think they saw the upside on that package either. So, we're just it's like saying our 2 properties in the Golden Triangle of equal merit or whatever. I mean, we know our property inside and out. We know that at Victor and at DPB, our second discovery, we know for a fact that they did not stop mining that because they thought they ran out of ore. They stopped mining it for very business-oriented reasons. In fact, they did development work at both of those targets. That's what we're drilling into now. So that's going to keep us busy for a long, long time. I certainly hope that they hit what they're expecting to hit. And I met Galen last week, their CEO, at a Capital conference, and a super nice guy. The best thing that could happen for us is they hit, and maybe we breathe a whole bunch of fresh life into this area. But for now, we're a train on the track, and we've got the blinders on.
What are the indications of how thick the Ohio vein is?
That was one of the biggest producers in the entire district. Certainly, it was among the highest grades. We've got big ideas for that. Now, Ohio was run by a separate mining company. We think it's actually part of the same vein, one of the veins that actually merges into the Victor area, but it's called Ohio because it was mined by what was called the Ohio Mining Company. The Ohio Mining Company didn't have the same caliber team that the Tonopah Extension Mining Company did. They didn't spend the money on engineers that they should have, and they lost their concept fairly early on. We're thinking that probably 4 to 5 meters, but the grades there they saw were off the charts, like 3-4 kilos, I think, from historic perspectives. I'd have to double check, but that's one of the higher grade targets. But effectively, Bill's got a concept which we can test very cheaply. If that happens, that's going to open up both targets, Victor and Ohio, significantly, because we could probably drive some decline down there that could be accessed for both targets. So we've yet to put any holes into that, just because we're adding as much value at the target number 2 with the RC rig. But we'll get to that very, very soon. But that's a ultra high grade. And it was one of the highest producing veins in the entire district, east or west.
Okay, we got to wrap it up soon, but can you offer some context on the blue-gray or the blue-green muck that you've sort of referenced?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a great book called The Bonanza King, which references this, or even if you want to go to the Comstock Load Wikipedia page, effectively, So the Comstock lode, which was the only silver district in Nevada that's bigger than Tonopah, and it's one of the reasons why Nevada is known as the Silver State. Early on, it was discovered in 1860. Early on, when they were mining it, all the miners were just complaining about this clay, which was mucking up all the equipment, and they just kept trying to find ways to wash it off and get rid of it. And then one day, someone decided to assay the clay, and they figured out that like 90% of the ore was caught in this clay, and it's blue because of all the sulfides in it, the silver sulfide. So we encountered in our first diamond core hole at Victor, we said we hit about a 32-meter zone of alteration, a vein zone, and we noticed a ton of blue clay. So, we're still waiting on those results, and anyway, it's up to anyone what that could be, but there are some similarities to the blue-gray clay, at least in terms of what I read and what we've seen from what they saw at the Comstock. So, yeah, that could be nice.
Great. Okay. Thanks a lot, Andrew. This was good, and thank you everybody for joining and for the questions. I think you hit most of them, and I'll see you again soon.
I do my best.
All right.
Thanks very much.